All right, so, it's the 17th of November, 2024. My name is Evan Strong, the founder of In the Image Clothing Company. This is In the Image Clothing Company podcast. Welcome back, or welcome to your first time. I'm going to just first off address this location. I actually personally love it. Out of all sincerity, I think this is really cool. It's the first time we've really filmed pretty much anything inside, and we do the podcast outdoors normally. So the only other thing that I filmed inside at all is our official shoelacing technique video, and I did it to have it be set apart, to be kind of like almost silly because it's inside and I was just sitting on the floor, and it was like, yeah, so different. But anyway, yeah, this is In the Image Clothing Company podcast. So anyway, yeah, the location is what it is. If you're listening to this in audio form, then you don't even really know what I'm talking about because you can't see it, but this is being filmed as well in visuals. So if you are watching it, then yeah, you know that I'm just sitting on the ground, got a TV playing a fireplace behind me, and a cabinet, so I like it though. I like it because it's a little bit more intimate for myself, actually. Like I'm very comfortable sitting here on the carpet, and it's gonna be nice. So I'm gonna get into the intro. As I do within the podcast, I intro it as if it were a video for In the Image Clothing Company. I discuss company information, what we're about, the prerequisites to just allow the body to have a chance to operate natural, and then we'll just get into the podcast. And this one's going to be really cool. This one's going to be one that has a lot of, I guess, personal examples. We'll see what we get into, but it's going to be really cool. I'm actually expecting, oh, you know what? I think we'll be fine, but I hope that there's enough space on what I'm filming this on to continue, because I was going to say I'm actually expecting this to be a pretty long podcast episode because I'm excited for a lot to say. But forewarning, I guess, if it does cut off before like I outro it, well, I ran out of space probably because it's plugged in, so it won't be the battery. Okay, so anyway, let's get into an intro. Yeah, we are In the Image Clothing Company. As I discuss with everything that I intro, we talk about the human body, and we talk about it as the skeletal system. The fat content comes and goes, the muscle mass comes and goes, but the skeletal system of the human body has to be in its only working position to be allowed to work. And we do that through clothing, because clothing is the only thing in our lives that has the degree of possibility to alter us that it does. There's nothing else that can alter us the way that clothing can, because it's placed physically on us. So we also talk about things that are flat in the world, man-made things that don't allow the natural rounding radius within our hand to be there. And within our feet, there's those natural gripped arches that like texture, but we focus mostly on clothing to allow the body to work. The key words always allow here at In the Image Clothing Company. And our two prerequisites that just allow the body to have a chance, and then we just get into depth from there, are to lace the shoes that you have with the technique that we have for In the Image Clothing Company. As I was mentioning, I have a video on that. Where you find our videos online, you can find that. Our official domain is InTheImageClothingCompany.com, but as of today's date, which I'm filming this podcast on, it is still under construction. So if you can go there when you're listening to this or watching it, then go. But if not, then maybe wait for a bit and then you'll be able to. So, yeah, tying your shoes evenly is included with the technique. So if you're watching this, you can see, but if you're hearing this, hopefully you can just tell what I'm talking about. The outside lace over toward the inside on each shoe, right, when you're tying that first foundational knot. That's just going to allow your body to have an even foundation traveling up, and that's what we do. So our second prerequisite is then to remove all the tags from all of your clothing, including in the shoes, because that really affects the arches of the feet. And then anywhere within the clothing that they're just causing a gap that's only in that location and nowhere else. And so it's really altering the body's natural workings. It'll fatigue you, and it'll change your body's position, your breathing patterns, a lot of things. So we get into chronic patternings, potentially living within things that are imbalanced like that. And yeah, so that's what In the Image Clothing Company is about. Now, this is In the Image Clothing Company podcast, as I was saying. And so within this, we don't really discuss clothing other than within the intro, right? Oh, well, okay, clothing needs to sit entirely above the hips for the pants, right? Slightly higher in the front than the rear to allow that core to stay active. And then the shoulder seams on tops need to be behind that little bone that's on the top of your shoulder, which is your collarbone. That just keeps them in their nice neutral position. And then the seams on the edges of the shoulders just need to be right at the very edges, okay? So that's how clothing needs to sit on everybody. It doesn't matter how tall you are, short you are, fat you are, skinny, what gender, what age, because it's the skeletal system and it just connects the way that it does, okay? So, yeah, In the Image Clothing Company podcast. I love it, and I think you can tell if you've ever seen anything from me in the Image Clothing Company wise as far as clothing videos go. My countenance is a lot calmer. Part of that is just the location. Is nice and, like almost sound deadening. I'm just kind of in a corner with the carpet and couch in front of me and things. I mean, the tripod for this, what I'm filming this with is a couch. I love it. But also, it just, the podcast allows me to just kind of go free reign, right? I mean, it can be as long as whatever. I can just discuss whatever I feel like I want to. Really, basically, it's, hey, let's turn on the camera or the, mic, whatever it is. And in this case, both, right? And just, we'll just talk and we'll just go, it's, it gives me a place to kind of vent and, not just for the sake of venting, but, this company that is In the Image Clothing Company, it's a community. It's founded and centered and geared around the gospel of Jesus Christ, the truth of all things. And so within that, me being the founder, let me address the fridge. There's a refrigerator that might be turning on and off. So if you can hear that, okay, I'm just addressing it now. That's fine. I don't really care for the sake of the quality of the video / audio podcast, but it might be happening. So I'm going to address it. But no, I love it. The podcast kind of gives me a place to, I've said before within videos in the Image Clothing Company that I like to talk a lot, and that's not really true. I love to have real, deep, authentic discussions on truth. I love to really get to the nitty-gritty of things. I love to be very blunt and straightforward and straight to the point. I don't like to beat around the bush, and so I like to talk in those kind of ways. And I can talk well. I mean, as you can tell within, up until this point in this episode of the podcast, this is the first time you've ever heard me. You can tell, I can speak well, very fluently, and I like to, but I just like to do it out of things that are important. And what I love about this company and what opportunity has been given to me through, especially the podcast, is the ability to have a place to kind of just vent like this, where I can discuss things that, are important enough for anybody to hear, to where it's not just like me wanting people to hear my thoughts and opinions, because we really try to keep our opinions out of everything that we do talk about here at In the Image Clothing Company. But it gives me a place to really be me, and like I'm saying, in this location especially, I'm just kind of I'm literally sitting on the ground in a corner. My toes are on the couch. I mean, that I said was the tripod. I mean, I'm kind of tucked in right here. There's a TV right behind me. I like it because, I mean, this is really what it's like to be, at the feet of God, really. I mean, we're going to get right into this because that's really beautiful. What I'm going to mostly focus on, again, this is the podcast episode. You can kind of go wherever, but really to have a title and, so people know what they're getting into. I'm going to mostly focus this podcast episode around dependence. And we'll get into that and we'll get into it. But, being at the feet of our Heavenly Father in the sense of being right there, there's all the things within the world that we could possibly choose from to put our importance on, or to think about, or to want, or to desire, whatever it is. But if we're at the feet of our Heavenly Father and just sitting there waiting, looking at Him, to Him, for guidance, then, then we're right there, then we're centered. Because then, we're at His feet. I mean, we're looking up to Him. We have ourselves, before Him. And I think, the reason I'm kind of starting this whole, dependence discussion with that is because as we go through life, there's so many things that we have the potential to be dependent upon out of our own free choices of doing, right? And we can choose to look at things as if we couldn't live without them, and that happens to a lot of people. That has happened to me many times, and that's not something that's good, speaking out of experience, right? As I do, I don't talk about things and condemn others for doing things, but I'm condemning things that I have also done. I mean, it's the behaviors that we're talking about, not the people that are doing them. So when it comes to being dependent on things or on people or validation or on fixes or vices, whatever it is that we could possibly choose to put our trust in the world, a lot of times we kind of lose sight of just how simple it is to just really trust our Heavenly Father, and again, that goes for everybody. And I've done that many times within my life, but it's never good, no matter when or who or what the case is that it's happening in. And so what I do really want to focus on is the fact that we could just have a lot of things that take our opinions, take our gosh, man, I don't know. I got a little bit like humbled. I'm talking so fast, and that's fine. But like, I don't want to feel like I'm just trying to get words out. You know, I want to sit here and, like I said, it's very great to build a vent, but I want to, I want to be very intentional with what I'm saying, with where I'm going with this, because, like I said, especially how I can relate this to my own life a lot. I want to, be discerning on what I should share. Not that I'm like holding anything back. Okay, yeah. That's the thing, is I want to be very discerning, to be like open to listening if, I'm prompted to say something or share something that I might otherwise be a little bit like nervous about, like people knowing. It's like, well, I mean, you can choose to hide, or you can just be transparent, and then like everything can just be what it is, because it already is that. And so we can't try to change it by hiding it, because no matter what, it's still there, and that's something I'm learning, just as everybody has the potential and chance to learn. I mean, we're just humans, just going through this life and growing as we go. And so I think it really is beautiful, though, to realize, no matter how scary it could be to like own up to something that you have done, that you've tried to hide for so many years, or something that you have, had like a secret for so long. It's like, hey, don't worry about it. I mean, everybody has it, meaning their thing. Like, everybody has a vice. Everybody has something that they like cling to and hold on to. And that's exactly what this episode's about. So, staying real with it. And that's what I've said, breaking down our own walls, each other's walls, being vulnerable. That's what we are at in the Image Clothing Company podcast, especially. So yeah, I mean, I just really want to try all that I can to be continually more open, continually more vulnerable, because the only thing that gives like secrets power over you is the fact that they're secrets. It's not what they are, but it's the fact that you're trying to hide them, right? I mean, you think about being like a bully in school, or like being bullied at school, and the only way that people can like use things against you is if you don't want them to be known, right? If you're just transparent and open about everything that you are, because you are that, and you can't change it no matter how much you want to try to hide it or what, then then you're just there. I mean, it's just open, it's just real, it's just you, and that's hard, and it's supposed to be. I mean, we're here to be challenged. We're here to learn how to overcome the world, as our perfect example, our God himself, did, right? I mean, Christ came to the earth and he overcame it, and yeah, I mean, like I'm saying, I want to be very obedient in this, no matter what, no matter how potentially scary it could be to be saying certain things or whatever, right? And so, yeah, we'll get into this. I mean, a lot of times we have things that we put dependence on, things that we go to soothe us, or to make us feel good or content or happy or whatever it is. And we really need to stop trying to seek happiness, if that's something that any of us at this current time are doing, because happiness is fleeting, and it's not something that's going to fulfill you. Happiness comes and goes, and that's what makes it so great, is the fact that sometimes we aren't happy. So then when you are, then it's like, oh, sweet contrast, opposition in all things, right? Scriptures. So anyway, I might throw in some scriptures here and there within this episode, but yeah, I mean, when we feel like we need something, when we feel like things are falling apart around us, and we gotta like hold on to something, or we gotta have something that's always like pretty consistent, that we know we can go to, that we know we can kind of like depend on, even if it's not like a good thing, or it's not gonna actually fulfill us, just something that we know is there. That's really a lot of times all it becomes. Because the thing is, like, you depend on like a certain substance or a certain activity or a certain behavior that you're doing, and that thing doesn't help you. It actually hinders your life, your progression, your body. But the thing is, it's something that will always be there, right? Something you can always go to. And this is the catch, right? The thing that will actually always be there. Because even that thing, there's times when you can't get access to it. Let's say like you're lost in the woods and you literally don't have anything besides the nature that's around you, and it's like trees and rocks and the occasional animal you run into. If you have this like thing that you're so used to being able to go to, like your cell phone, for example, but like you lost it before you got lost in the woods, and so now like that cell phone was the thing you're dependent on to like soothe you. You're like a little bit anxious or whatever, at least like you can go into your cell phone and do whatever you're going to do, because that's a thing that a lot of people have, is like a vice nowadays, right? A dependence that's not actually a real solid thing to depend on at all, right? But now, like I'm saying, like let's say you're in the woods and you don't even have it. And so the funny thing, why I was saying it was a catch, having these things that we feel like we can depend on, is they can't always be there, But what is like on the other end of that catch is that our God is always there, no matter what, no matter if we feel like he's not or what, no matter if we feel like he's distant because something we've done or because we feel like we aren't worthy of his love at that time or at all, or we don't know enough about him. We think that he's just this angry man in the sky. That's a belief a lot of people have. But that's why I say that ideally we don't believe in anything. We just know, because we have the opportunity to, the truth of all things, and it doesn't change. Christ is who he is. We don't get to interpret who he is, and we don't get to decide who he is. He just is who he is. No matter what your opinion of it is, or mine, or his, or hers, our God is our God. We're something he created, so our opinions don't get to determine who he is. And that's just how it is. I've talked about that a little bit within podcast episodes so far already, so I really want to talk about, myself, right? It's something I don't really do very often. I wasn't comfortable doing growing up. I never felt like I was, anything that was any importance to be talked about or anything. And I don't want to make it about me, but again, I want to use myself as an example. I want to be vulnerable. I want to open up, and we all have vices. And what I really want to do before I get a little bit vulnerable is say, hey, you're going to react the way you're going to react no matter who you are, and that's okay. But this is what I want to focus on. Everybody has things that they hide. And a lot of times, if we find something out about somebody that we don't want to know and we don't want to believe that they are or that they're doing or that they've done or that they take part in, a lot of times we're doing things that are actually like just as bad. There really is no such thing as like a worse sin than another. Ideally, we don't commit adultery, right? Ideally, we don't kill people. And those are like some of the major things. But really, in the sight of our God, in his eyes, it's just like how there's no better or worse human. He doesn't have favorites. Like, really all it is just like, hey, you mess up, just come back to me, is like what Christ says to us, right? Without being like too casual about saying that with like, too much casuality. But I'm not sure if casuality is a word, but I've used it so much in my past because I love it. And so, casuality. But a lot of times, you find something out about somebody that they've been going through for so long, but what's funny is sometimes we react to people doing things that like we just, man, I wish you wouldn't have been doing that because now it changed my view on you, but then you're doing the same thing, you know what I mean? And you're condemning them, but you're also doing that thing. Or like I said, you're doing something that's like just as bad in a sense. We're not supposed to judge each other. We're not. We're supposed to turn to the Father. We're supposed to realize that we are equals, even though that's really hard to see sometimes, no matter who it is. I've had a lot of hardship with certain people in my life, and it's like, man, I can't even like fully wrap my head around the fact that you are my equal, but I know it, right? Because I know my God, and he says that that's true, and there's stuff like that that's beautiful. But I want to talk about this. I want to talk about, there's a lot of things that, as generations go by, I've mentioned so many times, the world doesn't really change all that much. As far as like each generation that does come to the earth, they're going through the same things. They might just look kind of different. And, I'm going to get right into this because something like smoking cigarettes in the past is how like pornography is nowadays. And I'm going to get into this because in the past, like, it was so common to smoke cigarettes, you know what I mean? It was just like a popular thing. It was almost a social thing, like how people treat drinking alcohol as a social thing. But then other people look at it as like, you never drink alcohol. Like, I don't, right? I never drank alcohol. I don't plan to ever drink alcohol in my life. Not for a social thing, not for any kind of thing, not for a celebration. I just, right? That's me, right? But then other people are like, well, they just drink for social reasons, and they don't see any problem with that as long as it's like moderate and under control and whatever. And I would say again, like, we're within the gospel, the whole point is just, even within in the Image Clothing Company, the whole point is keeping your body unaltered, and drinking alcohol alters your mind, right? It puts you in an altered state. And so, I would say, outside of my opinion, but just if we're talking about being natural, I'd say ideally we should never drink anything that could possibly alter our bodies. We should never smoke anything that could possibly alter our bodies. We should never put any substance within our bodies that's going to alter it, in ways like that. And so I do want to be very clear about that, because I said that like some people drink for social reasons. I don't think there's anything wrong with it, whatever. But I want to, at In the Image Clothing Company, me being the founder, I kind of get to like decide where we stand on stuff like that. And being entirely, centered and geared around the gospel of Jesus Christ, yeah, alcohol is a no-go, right? And I'm not condemning people for drinking, whatever. I mean, people have whatever. Because that's the thing is I'm going to get into my own stuff right here, and I'm going to get a little bit, like, vulnerable about what I go through. So I'm not trying to be, like, hypocritical either, as if, like, that's what I was mentioning a few minutes ago, like, I'm not trying to say you can't do that, but then I get to go do this other sin. Like, no, that's not what I'm saying. But ideally, we're not altering our bodies, right? And that's the whole thing. That's the whole thing. So, yeah, just natural. Natural meaning like our ability, like our cognitive ability as well, right? And you drink things and you just get a little bit like, you just can't think quite straight the way that you would if you were just sober-minded. That's literally what that term means, right? So yeah, I mean, but what I was saying is, like, back in the, mid 1900s, let's say, or whatever, like, smoking cigarettes, even in, like, into, like, the later, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, I don't know, right? I don't know exactly, but mid 1900s, and then, like, past that, or before that as well. Good grief. I'm not trying to, like, beat around the bush, but I don't know exactly the dates of when it was so popular, but, it used to be so popular for people to just smoke indoors and smoke in cars and smoke in anywhere, right? It didn't matter if it was in the house or in a restaurant. I mean, in certain places they didn't really want you to, but it was so common. And the cigarettes were like this thing that was just all over the place, right? You got teenagers smoking cigarettes, which is pretty much common. Adults smoking cigarettes and cigars and whatever. And then, like, you got little kids in elementary school kind of like sneaking them, but then, like, they just kind of get a slap on the wrist if the adults found out they were smoking them or whatever. But a lot of it's just like the perception of the world at the time. Like I say, that the world doesn't really change, but it goes through, like, different phases. And nowadays, that's kind of how pornography is. The accessibility of cigarettes, and the world was kind of, like, not so even worried about it. Like, they didn't really care about the health reasons. Yeah. I mean, they really didn't. I mean, it was just a common thing. It was kind of, just what you do, just you smoke. And nowadays, it's, that's kind of how it is with pornography as far as how the world sees it, because it's so common, I mean, we have the internet, and that's something that we didn't have, 30-ish years ago, and then back ever. It didn't exist. I mean, they just invented it, and then now here it is, and it's everywhere. And on the internet, the most commonly placed thing on the internet is pornography. And not only that, but morals are just not what they were, right? But just like smoking, I mean, probably very few people smoke at one point, and then all of a sudden it's like this boom, and now everybody's doing it. But then nowadays, 2024, it's like pretty health conscious, of the fact of what smoking does to the internal organs of the body, you know what I mean? And everything within the body that it travels to. And so we kind of, the world kind of just goes through phases of understandings and of different, like, views on things being good or bad or right or wrong or what. And we're kind of like in the middle of that with pornography right now, where we live in this modern era where morals are just, like, out the window, It's funny because that word sounds like innuendo, which is sexual, like a joke of, yeah, in all seriousness, I mean, that's what it is. Like, all the TV shows, most of the jokes are, like, sexual jokes, and performances for singers that are wearing, like, nothing, right? And it used to be so immodest to even, like, show your shoulders, or, like, show past your fingertips. Like, if your hands are hanging down at your side, your shorts shouldn't come up past your fingertips certain times, right? Again, it's like generational. The world kind of goes through phases. But the point is, our bodies are supposed to be modest, and it's a commandment, and it's actually pretty much the first thing that happened, right? Adam and Eve are in the Garden of Eden on earth, the two first human beings. Adam was the first man God created on the sixth day, right? The 7 days of creation. That's why we have 7 days of the week. And on the seventh day, he rested. But he created Adam, he breathed life into his nostrils, and then from his rib, he took out Adam's rib, and he formed Eve, a woman, for him to have, like, a helper within the garden, right? And so that became his wife. That was the first commandment, actually, is to multiply and replenish the earth, right? For Adam and Eve to get married, to have children. And, yeah, to further the human family. that's where we all come from, right? We're all descendants of Adam. You hear that term, like, I don't know you from Adam, people say, like, if they don't really know who you are. Well, that's because Adam's the first man, and, like, the genealogy is like, I don't really know who you are, So, yeah. Anyway, I love that. A lot of the phrasings and sayings and things nowadays that people use, they don't realize they're biblical, doctrinal, from the gospel of Jesus Christ, from the truth of all things. And they're just like using these phrases, but then they're like, I don't believe in Christianity, some people say, but it's like, well, but you're using all these phrases that are from the Bible. It's like, okay, I mean, whatever at your current time, but let me help you see what's real, That's funny. That's really cool. No, but in all seriousness, that's serious as well. But just back to the story. Adam and Eve are in the garden, and they partook of the forbidden fruit, right? And I've actually discussed this story in like multiple podcast episodes up until now, but they partook of the forbidden fruit, which was the fruit within the garden that was of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, right? Our God said you can partake of any fruit within this garden, but do not eat of this one tree, because what it will do is teach you right from wrong. And they were in a perfect sinless state, so they took this forbidden fruit, and then they were naked, right? Well, they were already naked, but now they know, because now they have this knowledge of good and evil, and they know that they were naked. And so they cover themselves with fig leaves. God is coming through the garden, and he sees them, and he says, why are you guys covered up? And they say, because we were naked, and we felt ashamed. And he says, well, how did you know you were naked, right? And so they sinned. They took the fruit of the forbidden tree. That's the only thing that our God said they cannot do within the garden. Yeah, as far as, yeah. Anyway. Yeah. We're sinful by nature, and we are, and we're supposed to be, and the very first man, that's how we became what we are, right? We're supposed to be sinful. That's weird, but that's really how we're going to be allowed to rely on somebody, is if we need help. If we didn't sin, if we were just, perfect, we wouldn't need anybody. So, we need to be modest, we need to be covered up, and that's what's so cool about being a clothing company, though, as well. I mean, there's so many things about In the Image Clothing Company that we come at it from all ends. We come at it out of modesty, out of allowing the body to function well. We come out of it, I don't know. I mean, we come at it with the gospel through the podcast, like this episode here. I mean, I love how this company is. I love it. It's a gift. But, yeah, being modest, being able to stay covered up is a commandment, right? We're not supposed to be showing our bodies to the world, right? We get married, and within the bonds of holy matrimony, right? But like eternal marriage, like actual God ordained marriage, within that, yes, we can, see each other's, as far as husband and wife, each other's bodies and things, and that's totally fine. That's how you're going to multiply and replenish the earth, which was the first commandment, that's entirely fine. But nowadays, it gets a little bit, lax, where people are like, yeah, well, I mean, who cares? And they kind of do whatever they want. And again, I'm not trying to condemn other people, because I've made my own mistakes, but I'm just saying the behavior is what's wrong, no matter who's doing it, whether it was just me or anybody else, right? But yeah, it's so common to see people wearing basically no clothing, right? In public, outside at grocery stores, on the TV, music videos. I mean, everywhere, anywhere. So common for people to be wearing almost nothing. And it's like, so many people nowadays just accept it as like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, teach their own, do whatever you want, and holy cow. So morals are out the window like crazy. And people just don't even know how to be like their own. That's actually, I'm just going to stop there. People don't know how to be their own, in the sense of like, people get their validation from other people seeing their bodies. And, within relationships, that's what it becomes, is just this quick, like, fling. And, like, that's okay to so many people nowadays. And that is not okay. I mean, that kind of stuff always leaves wounds that pretty much don't leave. And people just cover those wounds by just doing the same behavior over again. And so that it's like numbing them, and they just become desensitized to what they're doing, and that's really what happens so often. Again, I'm not condemning it in the sense of like saying I've never done things like that, because I have. But it's just the behavior. It's not good. Not good. Sinful, right? Sins aren't good. but we are sinful by nature as well. We're going to sin no matter what, but that doesn't make it okay, right? And that's where there's like this bind in a good way, as far as like it's on both ends. Like, it's never okay to sin, but we also have to be okay with knowing we're going to. Yeah, because we will. We're not going to be perfect in this life. So anyway, when it comes down to pornography, it's something that people don't even like register as like a problem a lot of the time. You know what I mean? It's like, well, I mean, I don't know, like, why not? It's all over the internet. I mean, the internet's everywhere. It's like on billboards, and it's like in movies. You go to the movie theater and take your 4-year-old kid to a movie that's rated PG, and like you got people that are pretty much naked, you know, and it's real, and that's how it is nowadays. So it's become something that's been, like I said, so desensitized, right? I mean, the more you do something, the less it becomes something that's different, you know? I mean, it's like swearing. It's like doing any kind of thing within life at all. It's like, you know, calling somebody a certain thing, doing any kind of behavior that's something you maybe wouldn't have done in the past. The more you do it, the more it's like, well, I don't know, I've done it like 1,000 times now. It doesn't even matter anymore. You get desensitized to it, to the effect of it, to the degree of how it's affecting you or people around you or just the world, or, you know, what kind of example you're setting, whether you're trying to set an example or not. There's people who are always watching you, right? But that's where it's cool. I've talked about so many times within In the Image Clothing Company being the imperfect example, because that's exactly what I'm saying. Coming up, leading up to this, right, within this, the intro, like first part of this episode here, I was talking about how, you know, it's okay to make mistakes. We got to be okay with being vulnerable and being open, and knowing that people have their vices, and everybody has things that they are struggling with no matter what. And so actually it's good to admit your sins. You can't hide. Well, I mean, maybe you could. Maybe you could possibly go your entire life, or basically ever, without another human being finding out what you did. But it's still within you, and you've still done it, right? I mean, the truth is truth, meaning like you can't say like you didn't do something. You did do. And really, what's going to actually set you free is telling the truth. Even if it's not like something that you're like obligated to do necessarily, like as if you could go through your whole life having this vice, having this thing that you're dependent upon without anybody knowing. But like, what's going to actually set you free is just being like, hey, yeah, I'm struggling with this. Or I did. Maybe you're not anymore, and you never will, possibly, right? But it's like, I struggled with this for this amount of time, and this was me for this time. Or like, this is something I'm trying to do, or, well, no, this is something I'm trying not to do, but I end up doing, and it's like something that I'm kind of wrestling with and whatever. That's what's actually going to set you free, you know, is telling the truth, even if like it's not like you're really lying, if you just don't like make it known. But, you know, being open, being transparent, that's what's really going to grow you as a person. Even if it's things that you've really done that are wrong, hey, we've all done things that are wrong, okay? And what I love to see is some of the best examples are the people who have made the biggest mistakes, because they know, right? And that's, I mean, there's a lot of mistakes that I've made that even recently that are huge, but are actually going to be able to be the biggest learning experience, and things that I can use to tell other humans to help them grow, bigger than just about anything else that I could possibly share with them, right? Is my biggest mistakes. So that's really cool, you know, owning up to it, being the example, and yeah. And so with that being said, right, pornography is something that everybody struggles with. I'm not gonna try to sugarcoat that or try to pretend like that's not how it is, because you pretty much couldn't, because like I'm saying, I mean, it's a natural desire in a good way to like multiply and replenish the earth. I mean, that was our first commandment as human beings. But it just needs to be done in a correct way, right? In the way that our God laid out how we should do it. And we have the commandments, we have the scriptures, we have prayer, we have the discernment within inside of us. We can know what's right and what's wrong, but that doesn't mean we don't go against it, even though we do know. But we're not expected to be perfect. We're expected to sin. That's truth. That's real. That doesn't make it okay, but it's going to happen. So yeah, I mean, pornography is something that I struggle with, right? Big time, actually. Probably more than most people basically ever do. I mean, it's been a huge thing for me in my life, and it's like I was discussing with like the whole thing in the woods, you know, and if your phone is your vice, but then you're without it. I mean, that's kind of what it was. Is like, I felt like I was in my wilderness season. You know, within the gospel, we talk about that, you know, going through certain seasons, and there's themes throughout scripture that, I mean, that's really how our God lays out our lives, is within seasons like that, you know, wilderness season and then promised land. I don't know, that I don't know right now exactly how, it's all laid out, but it really does play out. It's similar to like the hero's journey, and stuff like this. There really is like phases and steps and that's really how it happens in our lives, because again, our God is orchestrating everything, and so he does it in a certain way, and he has like a kind of like a step-by-step routine, really, and we just individually go through it. That really is how it works, and it's really cool. Point is, with saying that, is it's like I was in my like wilderness season in a sense for like years. And I just felt like I was in survival mode, and I was, under a lot of control from my father. And I've kind of told that story, right, without like trying to be talking bad about another human, just speaking out of my own experience. Like, yeah, I was very much controlled by him, and, in constant state of fear because of, how he treated me. And again, that was just how it was for me growing up. This is my experience that I'm actually so grateful to be able to share, because I was in this like state of feeling like I just had to survive all the time. And so the only thing that I felt like I could like rely on was something that could soothe me. And it never did. It actually just made me feel guilty, right? And it made me feel disgusting. And I mean, but it's something that you feel is like under your control in a way, right? Yeah, and so man. That's the thing with these vices and stuff, is it feels like it's something you can control, right? People have like food as their like comfort thing, and so it's like if they feel all out of control, they're like, well, I better go get a snack, or people who just want to be on their phone doing whatever they do on it. They feel out of control, they're like, I gotta go, play on my phone or see whatever they see on their phone or do whatever they do. Pornography is one of those things, just like any kind of drug. It's something people don't really want to do drugs. I mean, that's not that people don't want to do that, but they do it because it seems like it could soothe them, right? And so I know how like the mindset of addiction works, because I've been there with this, and so that's what I love. I've said this so many times, but looking at me as the founder of In the Image Clothing Company from an outside perspective, it's actually beautiful that I'm the one that is the founder, because of the perspective that I have on pretty much all ends of life. I mean, I've experienced so much stuff, and that's what I'm saying is, even if a lot of it was just like big mistakes, some of that stuff's going to be the biggest teaching experiences that, are like examples to teach from, and it's personal. It's not something that I can just like try to figure out how to convey, but it's like, no, I mean, I lived this, and so, yeah, I mean, vices, man, feeling like you are dependent on something, and it's just really sad, because every time that I ever watched pornography, for whatever reason it was, or wherever we feel like we are in our lives, whatever we feel like we're lacking that could fulfill, or whatever we feel like it's giving to us, no matter what, like, our God has been there the whole time, is there the whole time, was there, will be, even after we make the mistake and then say we'll never do it again and then do it again. He's always going to be there. And so that's the whole thing, is like, even while we're doing these terrible sins, he's still there. He's still just like, hey, I'm here. Like, he's so patient. It's ridiculous. He's perfectly patient. He will never stop being patient with you. I mean, even if you're doing stuff that's pretty terrible, I mean, again, not that we can really like judge how terrible one sin is over another, because we're just commanded to not sin. But no matter what we are doing, it's nothing we ever could do would cause him to change his mind on us, about us, and change his love for us. And it would never cause him to turn his back on us or to give up on us, ever. Never. He doesn't. He wouldn't. He can't, because he's made promises to us. We make covenants to him, and he has covenanted things to us, and he's the promise keeper. I mean, he's the perfect promise keeper. So as we mess up on the promises we've made to him, he still holds up his end of the deal. That's, talk about things working only on one end a lot of the time, like agency, right? Meaning like getting to choose out of our own free will. That's a synonym for agency, is free will. It's only on one end. We can only choose out of our free will to sin or to damn ourselves as far as like our progression, right? Our God, his promises are on one end, but the other end, where he never breaks his promises no matter how many times we break ours. It's kind of like a one end kind of thing, even though, we do make two-way promises with him. He will always forgive us. That's crazy. So, I don't know. I love to be able to mess up, man, because, yeah, I mean, there are probably so many people out there like struggling in silence, as I was for so many years. And it's never about having a human being to rely on. It's never about, hey, this person understands what I'm going through. They've gone through a similar thing. Now I have somebody to go to. Never. Because that is a dependence in itself. It's good to be able to know that people can relate, but never should we be relying on human beings. Ever. They will always let us down. Because they're sinful as well. But knowing that our God is perfect, we can always rely on him. And so what things like this specific podcast episode, filmed and made by me, Evan Strong, the founder of In the Image Clothing Company, opening up about things that I have personally struggled with, other humans who have struggled with the same things, what this does is not say, hey, rely on me because I understand. No, do not rely on me. But it's saying, look, I've been through it, and, our God knows already. He sees us already. It's not like owning up to something is a shock to him. It's not like letting him know something he did is a shock to him. He knows everything. He knows it before it happens. I mean, he has our whole lives planned out. As much as we do kind of like choose how our lives go, we really don't. And I don't want to get into a debate about that. And that's a whole podcast episode in itself, potentially, if I decided to do an episode on that. But really, I mean, he knows everything before it happens. He knows everything. He is the beginning and the end, right? He is Alpha and Omega. He is the first and the last. He is the creator of all. He is the only way to access the kingdom of heaven and eternal life. I mean, he is all. He knows all. There's nothing he doesn't know. So, there's no need, even if it could seem scary or worrisome or wondering, is it okay? Is it safe? Is it whatever to share what you have gone through? The answer is yes. No matter how anybody takes anything, the answer is always yes. Right? I mean, we can have the opinions we want on anything. Anybody can judge us however they want about anything we have done or haven't done. But the answer is always yes to being authentic, to being vulnerable, to being real, to being honest, to telling the truth, even if it gets convicted. I mean, like, what, you commit a crime, and it's like, well, should I tell the truth? Yes. Even if, like, you could potentially get away with lying and not get convicted of a felony and thrown in jail, tell the truth. The answer is always yes to telling the truth. There's always repercussions to everything, good and bad things. But the answer is always yes. Our God is the God of yes. He's the God of way making. He's the God of, hey, be honest, keep my commandments, right? Thou shalt not lie. And no matter what, I'm going to make a way for you. Because the biggest thing is, it's not about this life. The last podcast episode is actually titled The Long Game, and I discussed that. It's not about this life. And so that's the thing, is like, even committing some huge crime and getting thrown into jail, it's always about telling the truth. Because it's not about this life. And I'd rather face 20 years to life in prison than face my God at the end of life out of prison after lying, having committed a crime and saying I didn't, and getting out of jail. Like getting out of the sentence. It's always about saying yes. to truth. So, yeah, our God is above all. Because we've got vices, man. We got things we struggle with. But, that's why, like, AA groups for addiction, that's why they're so beautiful. That's the whole saying yes. As in, you can be struggling with something so much and just keep saying, no, I'm not. It's not a problem. I'm not struggling with it. No. You're only lying to yourself and our God. And he already knows the truth. So you can't just like trick him or lie to him. And you can live your whole life trying to do that, but then you're going to die and come to his feet and be at the judgment seat. And now it's like, hey, I guess you already knew, huh? Yeah. So, yeah, man. I mean, it's always about telling the truth, because that's the thing. You go into an AA meeting, you sit down, and the whole like addiction recovery thing. That's what it is. I don't know if it's the first step or what, but like what? Because I don't know how the steps go. But one of the first steps is like admitting that you have a problem. You know what I mean? Like you can't sit there and just like deny it. It's always about saying yes. If you are struggling with something, then just say, yeah, I am, because then you can get help, right? I've talked about so often, like, people nowadays thinking that they are their own creator and that they can, like, choose whatever is right and wrong and they can have their own truth, and it's just disgusting. First of all, let me make that very, very apparent. Disgusting beliefs that people have. But the big thing with that is that, you just can't. I mean, our God is above all. So the point is, I guess, like, shoot, I don't know where I was going with that, because that hits hard. Every time I think about that, people having their own truth, it just makes me want to, like, throw up on them. Without being, like, mean, but it's disgusting. Because if you can have your own truth, then you can just do the most evil thing and say that your truth is that it wasn't wrong to do, but then, like, you just ruined somebody else's life, It's absurd. Our God is apart from all of us. He is the truth of all things, and he is something that does not change, that we can't determine is this or that. He is just what he is, and he is unchanging, right? And I've gone over that so many times. That's one of those things that I've said could never be said too much, because truth is truth, period. And I don't get to decide it. Nobody does. No human being. So anyway, but yeah, I mean, having a vice and realizing that we gotta own up to it, man. Because we got things that we depend on, but that's the whole thing. Going into that AA meeting, sitting down with people who are struggling with things, even if they're different things that are struggling in such similar ways, to where you can sit down there with them and you can say, yeah, I own up to this. I'm struggling. I got this vice. And, how are you going to get free from that? Well, you're going to rely on something that is unchanging, because you're relying on something that changes, right? You're relying on something that is conditional in order to be soothed by something like pornography, because of what it does to your emotions and your brain and the endorphins that it releases and things, and dopamine, or, any kind of drug, any kind of like behavior, activity, substance. It's conditional on the condition that you can get your hands on it, right? Yeah, maybe it can soothe you in the moment, even though it's like with mixed feelings, because you're so guilty about it and you feel so gross about it, and maybe it's actually damaging your body physically while you're doing it, even though in some ways in the same moment it's also like soothing you to a degree, fulfilling something within you, or so it seems, right? The big thing is it's always going to be conditional, and our God is unconditional. His love is unconditional. His perfection is unconditional. His presence is unconditional. As far as he's always there, right? He stands at the door and knocks, and we just need to open it and allow him to come in and eat with us, right? That's scripture as well. So, yeah, I mean, unconditional, the God of impossible, right? As many times as you want to try to do anything within this life to overcome your vice, your addiction, your dependence on a thing, a person, anything, a behavior, a mindset, whatever it could be, our God is the God of the impossible, because it seems impossible after you feel like you have tried everything to free yourself from this prison that is this dependence on whatever it is. if we can surrender to our God, even if we mess up again, because that's the whole point. I mean, when you talk about like addicts, for example, people who have an addiction, there's no such thing as a recovered addict. It's a recovering for life addict. And that's okay. It's not like it's like, well, you should have recovered by this time. Like, no. If you're struggling with something and it's become something that you have created a dependence upon, then you're a recovering addict for life. And that doesn't have to be some label you place on anybody or yourself or myself or anything, no. But meaning we're always going to have the potential to mess up again, no matter how good we get at like not messing up. And so our God, when I say surrendering to him and stopping our sins, it's not like permanently no matter what and you never make a mistake again. It's like, no, every time you do make a mistake, because you will, I will, we just come back to him again and try to surrender to him again. And each time just try to get better at doing that. And that's just how it is. That's what it is. So yeah, the God of impossible, because it seems impossible to be forgiven for doing things that people frown upon so much. It seems impossible to forgive ourselves for doing things that people or even ourselves frown upon. Even if we're doing these things, we still might frown upon them while we're doing them. But our God has already forgiven us before we've done anything. Like I said, he already knows everything we're going to do. He's already forgiven us before we do it. But we have to realize who he is. And I love to say this because it's hard to hear, but we have to realize our place and that we're nothing to him, compared to him. But in his eyes, and I've said this before, right, this whole phrasing, in his eyes we are everything, even though compared to him we are nothing. We can't do anything on our own. I mean, but he loves us. His love for us doesn't change, but he's not going to continue to try to help us with things if we're not going to be willing to try to follow him, even if and when, key being when, because we mess up again, right? So, yeah. No, it's beautiful, man. I mean, when it comes to dependence, there's actually one thing that we should depend on always, with ideally the wholeness of our being, and that is our God, our Savior, Jesus Christ, the one. Because he can overcome everything. He did overcome the world. He loves us. He has power over everything. He has the power of creation in his hands, in his words, right? I mean, he spoke and there was the world, right? He spoke everything into existence. There's nothing he can't do. And so he is the thing, the only thing that we can and should always entirely depend on. And he's not just going to do whatever we want, but he's going to do what he needs done. And we just have to be open to that happening. I'm going to address the fact that I'm talking pretty quiet. I mean, I'm just getting so humbled and real with this to where, yeah, I'm just, it's fine if it's, if you had to like turn it up a little bit as it got into it because I started talking quieter, that's fine. I just want to address that I'm aware. But, yeah, he loves us. Always. So cool, man. And what's so cool is, like I'm saying about being the imperfect example, each time you mess up, that's where your testimony gets built, is when you're going through stuff that you need help with. If your life's going all perfect, you're not really so, your testimony doesn't really have a chance to grow very much, and you don't really have enough chances to have big events to be good examples for others at the same time, right? Because it's actually the mess ups that are the good things. It's strange to say, but that's what life's for, is messing up, falling down, making mistakes, raising kids. Like, I was watching I was watching a movie last night about panda bears, right? And I was watching how this mother panda bear was raising her baby, and she, I love bears. I think I've mentioned that before, but I love bears so much, brown bears especially. But bears, as they're cubs and as they're growing up, really they need to be able to climb a tree, right? And that's how they're like becoming their own person in a sense, right? I know that they're an animal, but you know what I mean. Because that's how they stay safe from other animals and things, is, you know, climbing up a tree. And so this panda bear in the movie last night, the cub, was trying to climb the tree, and the mom kept pulling her out of the tree. She's like, no, not yet, not yet. You know, the mother panda bear didn't want her to climb the tree because she could fall, right? I mean, she's not so great at climbing yet, and so what, she gets up there quite a bit and she falls down. But there comes a time when that cub needs to be able to be allowed to climb the tree by herself, regardless of if she's going to fall or not, because she has to be able to do it on her own. The point is with that is like falling, right? She has to, what I mean by doing it on her own is that she has to be able to just be okay, the mother, with her daughter falling out of the tree, because it happens. And each time she does, she learns from it. So it's like, you know, the sins that we make. It's actually good to fall out of the tree, in a sense, because then, well, that's the thing, you know, the mom knows the repercussions of climbing a tree that you could fall out of, because she's probably fallen out of trees quite often in her life, and so she doesn't want her cub to have to potentially get hurt. But it's getting hurt. It's doing things that we didn't really want to happen or didn't expect to happen. That's where we learn, you know, and getting into these habits and these dependencies is something we never really wanted to do, because addicts don't want to be addicts, you know what I mean? You're addicted to something, not because you like it, but because it's become, like I'm saying, something that you feel that you can depend on, even though you really know you can't. So yeah, I mean, people don't want to be addicted to things, you know, but it becomes just like a vice, man. I mean, there's nothing that's going to be able to free us from anything besides God. Nothing. I mean, because the thing is, if you try to get freed from some kind of like dependence by doing something else, then you'll become dependent on that thing. Because if something else can trump the thing that you're dependent upon, then that thing will then become a dependence. Because it's like, this is even better than that thing that I was always doing, so now all your focus goes to that, right? So anyway, with the bear story, I just want to make sure that I made that like something that you can understand. What I was saying is, it's not like we're going to just stop messing up, because the mother panda bear, there we go. I was like, how am I bringing this full circle? Because I had a really good point, other than the fact that bears are awesome. I love bears so much. They also stand with so much internal rotation, which is I love, especially brown bears, so much. Yeah, in Idaho, in the United States of America, the state of Idaho, they have this national park called Bear World, and I went there when I was young, and I love it. I love bears so much. But the mother panda bear, right, in the movie last night that I was watching, she still falls out of trees probably occasionally, and so that's the whole thing, is she hasn't completely stopped falling out of trees because she has grown up, right? And so she's not trying to get her cub to never fall out of a tree necessarily, but because she herself as a cub struggled with falling so much, she knows what it's like. But then it can still happen, you know? It's like people who are addicts, who are addicted to things, they know what it's like. And so when they go through recovery, right, and they are recovering for life, really, right, it's not like they're never going to fall out of the tree, right? Like the mother panda bear. They're still going to, I mean, I'm not just like saying that you're damned to do the thing that you were addicted to again, and like you could never be recovered, but I mean, just the point is, don't have that mindset like you have to be, because then if you do mess up, then it's like, oh gosh, the end of the world. It's like, no, it's just you're doing better than you did before. The mother panda bear falls out of the tree less than she did when she was a cub, right? That's all it is. That was actually a beautiful example. The panda bears, I love that. That's a gift to be able to throw that in here. That's awesome. No, I just love bears so much. But yeah, I mean, like, even me going forward, like, no matter how much I get, like, recovered, quote unquote, that's a really great time to throw quotes in there, because there's pretty much no such thing. I mean, because what, you say that you're recovered from something that you were once dependent upon, and then if you do that thing one more time, it's as if the world is over. Your life is over in your mind, right? Because, like, I said I would never do it again. Hey, well, guess what? We're sinful by nature. Hey, guess what? We're supposed to be. Yeah, I mean, we're supposed to turn from our ways, but that just means have the intention to, right? Be trying to better ourselves always. Yeah, but life goes in seasons, and life goes in chapters, and sometimes we go through things that are so much harder to deal with than other times in our life were to deal with. And in those times, we have the tendency to go back to the thing that was our vice, that we thought we had overcome. But if we do that, hey, cool. And I don't want that to seem like it's a problem being that casual, because really it's like, hey, cool. Guess what? We're human beings, right? Just try again. The whole try again thing, like, I feel like it's almost like a nursery rhyme type phrase. That's beautiful. I mean, that's life. As far as that's life at 3 years old, and that's life at 85 years old. Just, any point of your life. It's always just try again. Because, hey, we're always children of our God. I mean, He's the only perfect one. So, yeah, we're messing up, but that's not a problem. It's not a problem to mess up. It's really cool. I mean, man, I love that panda bear analogy. That's like sticking with me. I love that so much. Because, yeah, the mother panda bear, she's still going to be falling out of trees occasionally when a branch breaks. Or she just, like, whatever. I mean, stuff just happens. There's never any kind of thing about, like, being, like, recovered from a dependency. I mean, I guess, like, really what we could word it as is the cub is dependent on the ground. Like, the mother panda bear could probably spend her entire life in the trees as long as she could, get all that she needed while she was up there, But the cub is dependent on the ground for its, sense of security. Even though, like I'm saying, I mean, eventually he probably, or she, I think it was a girl, this panda cub, she could probably eventually spend her entire existence in the trees, but until she overcomes... That's so awesome, this analogy. Until she overcomes the problem of falling out of the tree, then she is dependent on the ground, because the ground's where she's going to fall to, right? Until we can overcome these things that we're dependent upon, then we're dependent on them, because they're the thing that we go to thinking that they're so secure. But in a sense, the tree could be just as secure to the panda as the ground, right? I mean, but we're just at different understandings and different abilities of, like, self, right? Not that we're comparing ourselves to others, but comparing ourselves to our past selves in a good way, out of seeing improvements, even if we backslide a little bit. And that's something we got to get a little bit over, right? This whole idea of, like, we shouldn't ever backslide. We shouldn't ever struggle with something that we, like, feel like we stopped struggling with at one point. It's like, no, life's a constant thing, man. It's a constant progression with setbacks mixed in. That's huge, because it's not like it's just a linear progression. Life's all over the place, in every aspect, in finances, in family, in learning something, in capability of something, physically, emotionally, mentally, intellect type things, like, holy cow, I mean, whatever it is, family situations, you think you're progressing so linearly. You got married, you had kids, your kids are getting raised, and you think your family's just getting better and better and better. It's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and then something happens. You get a divorce, and for some reason it's entirely out of your control, or somebody within your family dies. Like, stuff like that's it's not a bad, quote unquote, backslide. I mean, it's just something that happens. Life's unpredictable and always will be. And we're just not in control of ourselves. I mean, ideally we, can take accountability for what we do, and we try to be, pretty good at just doing what we can, but we're really not in control of ourselves. I think that's another thing that people kind of get wrong is like, I mean, things happen. Sometimes emotions get the best of you. I mean, like, you can be the most, like, practiced monk, for example, and still, like, struggle with something, still get mad when you're supposed to have, like, perfect peace, right? The whole point is humbling ourselves before our God and realizing we're always going to need him. Always. He is the perfect thing to depend on. The thing that could never be something that could let us down, ever. Even if he intentionally puts things into our lives that are struggles, right? That's the thing we got to see, is it's not about what we want, it's about what we need. For whatever reason that is that we can't understand in this life, right? And there's a lot that we can understand that seems even like so far out there in the spirit. I mean, we have access to whatever we're supposed to have access to, that we're given to by him, but there's also things that, like, he's just not going to tell us in this life because he knows everything we don't, right? So anyway, dependence, right? We have to depend on our God because we always can. Always. So I think that's where we're going to wrap this up. I'm going to literally, like, express verbally my gratitude, even though you could just tell how much joy it brought me. But for that panda bear analogy, that, like, filled my soul. I love that. Anyway, so yeah, thank you for listening to this episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast. Please just be patient with yourself. Be as understanding as you can with the people around you who are dependent on things that you feel they should have never even gotten into in the first place. Hey, you're going to condemn them, and then what? Down the road, you might be struggling. I mean, I'm not trying to, like, jinx anything. Knock on this wicker thing. But you condemn somebody for doing something that you say, like, you never should have gotten into that. And then down the road, you could potentially get into something that's, like, as bad or in your mind worse or whatever, right? We're just human beings struggling with different things in the same ways or same things in different ways. We're just sinful by nature. And our God is perfect. So, thank you. Like I said, my name is Evan Strong, the founder of In the Image Clothing Company podcast. Well, yes, but also just In the Image Clothing Company. The podcast is kind of like a part of, our official name as a company is just that second one. So, check us out. We have a lot of videos on the natural workings of the body, on clothing, free modifications you can make with nothing but a pair of scissors to allow your clothing to just sit on your body without altering it. Ideally, the best that we can within the clothing that we purchase from other people. We will have clothing available, always made out of 100% natural materials, staying centered, allowing the body to work. Please only ever buy clothing from In the Image Clothing Company if you try your best to purchase it in your size, because buying it oversized to fit fashionably will just alter your body's natural workings. And that's the whole reason we are what we are, is to allow the body to be natural. So, yeah, thank you. The 17th of November, 2024 is today's date. I like this location. It's a nice little cozy corner to curl up in for this podcast episode. I love that I'm able to be vulnerable. And again, no matter how people receive you, you're still you. Okay? Because when people are judging, they're actually only sinning, right? We're commanded to not judge. We're also commanded to not do these things that become our vices, but it's a sin in itself, condemning somebody else for having sinned in a way that you feel is so wrong. So we got to realize our place, and that our God is above everything and always will be, and that's just how it is. Okay, so thank you. Please check out the Book of Mormon, which is another testament of Jesus Christ in combination with the Holy Bible. True scripture. Real, actual historical records, real, actual, unchanging, universal truths of this, of what we experience as human beings. If you have questions, there is your answers. Get on your knees and pray. You don't have to be on your knees. That is a misconception. You do not. I mean, yes, it does show that we are willing to know our place, but what our God wants is an intimate connection and relationship with us. And that looks how it looks for us, because he knows us perfectly, better than we could ever know ourselves. And so whatever's authentic to you to speak to your ever-present creator, do that. But do it out of the best that you can, respect and humility before him. Okay, so, yes. The Bible teaches that kind of stuff. The Book of Mormon teaches that kind of stuff of like how to approach our God, because we're not just going to be able to sit here and just like throw out demands and commands and expect that because we prayed to him we should get something. No, it's actually so much more beneficial for us to actually be withheld from the things that we ask for if they're not going to help us. So, yeah. We have to look at our God as he is. Like I talk about with the body, we look at the human body as it is, as it was before it ever had the chance to get altered through or by the world, clothing and flat things and whatever we discuss, right? At In the Image Clothing Company. Same thing with our living, ever-present God. We have to look at him and to him as he is. We don't get to have perceptions and tell ourselves or other humans how he is or how he will work if we do X. He is who he is. And we have to be able to see that that is that done. Okay? So that's huge. No perceptions that we can have. We can't change who he is or decide that he will work this way if we do this, or no. He is who he is. He is perfect. And we are essentially nothing compared to him. So that just makes it more beautiful to see how much he wants us when we really are nothing. That's a good thing to see. That's a good way to look at it. The more you realize you really are just kind of like a pawn, that's when you get set free, because then you'll realize your place and you'll realize how much you really are loved when there's 7 billion plus just like you. And he chooses to do these beautiful things that he does for you, specific. So, thank you.